What you're listening to was composed in 2019 by the French composer Pierre-Emmanuel Desfray as part of a series of live film concerts for the 1927 silent movie It, Le Coup de Foudre. However, this is an AI reinterpretation created from the original MIDI mock-up as part of an experiment. As we reach the end of 2025, the music industry is undergoing a major transformation with the arrival of artificial intelligence, now omnipresent in the market. Whether you're an experienced composer or a beginner, everyone faces the same question: how to create music. Among the legendary figures in film music and classical music, two names often come up: Jerry Goldsmith and John Williams, whose works have inspired several generations of musicians and enthusiasts. Unlike John Williams, a regular composer can't always afford to record with an orchestra and everything that entails. Today, the process usually looks like this. The composer has an idea, writes it down, and develops it in a DAW like Cubase or Logic, producing a sketch with melody, harmony, counterpoint, and rhythms. Once that's done, they move on to orchestration and use virtual instrument libraries to bring the music to life. The problem? Half the time it sounds bad. They spend hours, sometimes days, trying to figure out what's wrong. Maybe the orchestration, maybe the sounds, maybe the mix. Hours and hours desperately trying to fix it. This fuels a parallel market driven by Jeff Walker-style marketing, full of tutorials like how to improve your mock-ups, make your brass more epic, get hyper-realistic strings, and so on. All of this represents a huge investment, several years of work, and a few $1,000s, if not more, just to get as close as possible to the production quality of their references. Let's look at the costs of a real-world production for a music recording with an 80 to 100-piece orchestra, assuming the composer is not paid. The composer creates the sketch. If they have the time and talent, they do their own arrangements and orchestration. Most hire an arranger or orchestrator, $100 to $200 per hour, or a flat fee of $1,000 to $2,000, depending on workload and reputation. Copyists, $700 to $1,500. Without them, musicians can't perform. Hiring a contractor, booker, to organize the production, $1,000 to $2,000, sometimes 10 to 15% of the total budget. Recording studio, about $4,000 to $4,500 for an 8-hour day. Sound engineer, $500 to $2,000 per day. Technical services, Pro Tools, assistants, microphones, equipment, about $1,000. Solo musician, $300 to $700 for a half day, sometimes more depending on reputation. Full orchestra, 80 to 100 musicians, $20,000 to $40,000, often with a 10% coordinator fee. Mixing, $100 to $200 per hour, 4 to 8 hours. Mastering, $50 to $250 per hour, about 4 hours. Transportation and catering, $15,000 to $20,000, depending on logistics. Total estimate, $40,000 to $80,000. Unless you're extremely wealthy, you can't spend this amount without production backing, and that's another story entirely. When a composer spends hours developing ideas without getting the sound they want, frustration sets in. Discouragement becomes inevitable, and motivation often disappears completely, sometimes leading to abandoned projects. Today, we can ask questions about the future of the entire music production chain: composers, arrangers, orchestrators, copyists, contractors, studios, orchestras, sound engineers, mixers, and mastering specialists, and virtual instrument developers, because a company like Suno now allows anyone, with a simple prompt, to generate music in the desired style in under a minute. Some will say, "That's not real music. You didn't compose it." Many people agree, and yet it's not limited to that. With Suno, you can upload or even sing your idea directly into the interface and request an arrangement in the style you want, all in under a minute. People will say, "Yes, but it added parts you didn't think of." You could reply, "Isn't that exactly what an arranger, whom you would have paid, does?" You can also upload a mock-up and ask Suno not to arrange it, but only to orchestrate it in a specific style and color. People will say, "Yes, but you didn't orchestrate it yourself." Again, you could reply, "Isn't that exactly what an orchestrator, whom you would have paid, does?" Professional opinions, especially from teachers, are particularly interesting. One says, "It's still a young tool, but it evolves at a speed we can't even imagine. Every day it improves thanks to content uploaded by users. In 10 years, it will be enormous." Young musicians will need to be taught how to use it, to understand it's a tool, not a magic wand. In the right hands, it can become a real creative lever. He adds, "A young musician who wants to compose doesn't yet have the skills or perspective to judge the quality of their ideas. They can then use AI to help search for melodies and arrangements, and that's when the most important part comes, knowing how to listen and understand what they hear. This is when reverse learning comes into play. Later, when it comes to preparing sheet music for musicians, the real learning begins. The student must train their ear to understand harmony, pick out melodic and bass lines, identify chords, and find the correct chord symbols. In this way, the student must go through an active learning process to understand in depth the music they generated. We can therefore talk about a reverse learning method. The young musician starts from a nearly finished piece, mixed and mastered, and must break down each track to transcribe it in Sybius or on paper, so that musicians can work on their parts and perform the music in concert. By contrast, the traditional method requires the experienced composer to write music on a score, edit the separate parts for each musician, then record in a studio and refine the arrangements if needed. This method takes a lot of time and a significant budget. The reverse method, however, allows starting from a finished project and then having it replayed and humanized by musicians. The goal remains the same, for the music to be played and heard by the public, but the learning happens by understanding and reconstructing existing music rather than starting from a blank page. We can compare this process to that of an architect. The architect starts by drawing plans, on paper or with 3D software. Then he can create visual renderings to project the final building. These images let you see the final result before a single wall is built. The young musician, on the other hand, starts directly from the rendering, a nearly finished, mixed and mastered piece. His job is to work backwards, analyzing every melodic line, chord, and harmonic structure, just like an architect studying the 3D rendering to understand how each part of a building was constructed. He adds, "Some say this is for the incompetent, but at 18 you're not yet competent. And precisely this tool can motivate you to learn, even in reverse. A young musician can record an idea on their phone, upload it to Suno, choose an accompaniment style, and have their music in 1 minute. Later, they can replay it with real musicians, like another musician would have done with Band-in-a-Box, a computer, a keyboard, a mic. The time saved is considerable." Another professional says, "It's a tool that will separate those who have no talent but try to cheat from those who have real talent and can now progress at the speed of light thanks to it." At the time this video was made, late 2025, we are still at the beginning of this technology. It is a precise tool that excels in tonal music of all styles, but it is still unable to handle atonal, contemporary, or spectral music properly. Sounds are still generated synthetically. AI is not yet capable of providing clean sheet music with separate parts. It cannot reliably read an orchestral score, let alone a manuscript. But it still gives a glimpse of what these tools might offer in a future worthy of the Twilight Zone. It is clearly a revolution comparable to the advent of the first smartphones. And today, who doesn't use a smartphone? A generational conflict is also emerging. People over 45 are often resistant to this technology, while younger generations adopt it without hesitation. One teacher says, "The positive aspects of this technology, No more frustration over having to know mixing or programming. It allows you to test ideas very quickly. And above all, it motivates making music, which is a good thing. To contextualize what we've just discussed, let's take a piece composed in 2019 by Pierre-Emmanuel Desfray for the silent film It, Le Coup de Foudre. Here is a snippet of the MIDI mockup. Here is the same mock-up, reinterpreted by Suno in under a minute. Or a sketch for a jingle composed in 2023 by Marcel. Here is the original. And here is the Suno arranged and orchestrated version, also in under a minute. The goal of this video is to spark debate, offer critique with an open mind, but to understand how AI will redefine the way music is created. And, to finish on a humorous note, know that you'll also be able to adapt and rearrange your own music for a Barbie-style end credit sequence, giving it a touch in the style of Nicki Minaj.
Silent movie, but my mouth talk loud. Red lips, dark eyes, I make him crawl, I make him bow. Rich ass, like we think you got the lead. Bitch, I'm the storm, I'm the hunger, I'm the need. I walk in the store, silk gloves, little green, pretty face, big teeth. Baby, I always win, it could be a bitch, twerk, bake, shake my ass. But don't get it twisted, boy, I'm the top of this class. I stock up teas, I buy that lick, I play innocent, then hit them sick. Glass heels, sharp nails, I don't give a fuck. Bitch, I take what I want, money, love, or luck. Champagne, dream, diamonds on my wrist. I kiss him slow, then twitches his ass like this. He think he's hunting, but he just might. So I over trips in his veins, look through the floor. bitch if you let me play. But you'll be my bitch by the end of the day. I'll bitch, I'll tease, I'll fucking bend. But don't forget, always winning and yeah, I'm a bitch. Savage slick, I make you big, I make you lick. You think you hunt, you think you rich, bitch. Now you're my bitch.